Captain Matthew Harrison stood at the observation window of Station Meridian and watched the Valorian ships approach. The vessels moved through space like frozen light, elegant and perfect in every way. Matthew had been in the military for 22 years, and he had learned to recognize superiority when he saw it. The Valorians were superior in almost every way that mattered in the galaxy. The station itself was a massive structure orbiting above New Haven, a planet that humans had settled 5 years ago. New Haven was not the most beautiful planet in the galaxy, and it was not the most resource-rich either, but it was home to more than 1,200 people. Families lived here. Children played in the recreational sectors. People had built lives on this station and on the surface below. Lieutenant Lisa Abbott was the senior communications officer, and she had handled most of the contact with the Valorian delegation. Lisa was 35 years old and had been born on a space station herself. She understood the protocols of galactic communication. She also understood when someone was looking down on you, and the Valorians always look down. "They are requesting full access to our defensive systems," Lisa reported to Matthew. She stood at attention, but there was frustration in her eyes. "They want to review every weapon, every shield, every sensor array we have." "Did they say why?" Matthew asked. "They said it is for evaluation purposes. The Valorians believe that Station Meridian might not be worth defending if we cannot meet their standards." Matthew turned away from the window. The Valorians had been in the Galactic Council for over 4,000 years. They had technology that humans would not understand for another 1,000 years. It made sense that they would look at human defenses and find them inadequate. What did not make sense was the tone they used. The Valorians never spoke to humans as equals. Dr. Patricia Torres was the chief engineer of Station Meridian. She had designed most of the weapon systems that currently protected the station. She had also fought hard to get approval for every upgrade and every improvement. Patricia was one of the smartest people Matthew had ever met, and she had a temper that matched her intelligence. When Patricia heard about the Valorian request, she came to Matthew's office and closed the door behind her. "They are going to tell us our systems are wrong," Patricia said. She did not sit down. She stood in front of his desk like someone about to go into battle. "They are going to design something new. We will be forced to follow their specifications. And then, when something goes wrong, it will be our fault for not implementing their design correctly. Perhaps their design will be better," Matthew said. Patricia looked at him like he had suggested something crazy. "Their design will be elegant. It will be perfect. And it will not work for how humans think. We do not process information the way Valorians do. We do not approach problems the same way. But the Council will not care about that." Matthew understood what Patricia was saying. She was right. The Valorians would design a system that was perfect for Valorian-style thinking. It would work perfectly until it did not work at all. The Valorian delegation arrived 3 hours later. There were 5 of them, all leaders in various fields. They were beings made of what looked like crystalline material, but the crystal was alive. Light moved through their bodies in patterns that seemed almost like thoughts. They were beautiful to look at, and looking at them made humans understand why the galaxy had decided that Valorians were the ones in charge. Keeper Ellis was the leader of the delegation. Ellis was old by Valorian standards, which meant Ellis had been alive for over 3,000 years. Ellis had seen empires rise and fall. Ellis had made decisions that had affected billions of lives. The briefing room was full. Matthew had brought all of his senior staff. Patricia was there with her engineering team. Derek Foster, the tactical officer, was there with his weapons specialists. The entire station was going to hear what the Valorians thought about their defenses. Keeper Ellis began speaking, and the voice sounded like wind chimes moving in a gentle breeze. "We have reviewed your station. We have examined your weapon systems. We have studied your shields. We have analyzed your approach to planetary defense. You are not ready for the threats that exist in this sector." No one spoke. Matthew had known this was coming. "Your species shows some promise," Alice continued. "You are creative in ways that we find interesting. You take risks that we would not take. But you lack the sophistication for true galactic warfare. The weapons you have built are crude. The shields you have constructed are inefficient. The strategy you have developed is inconsistent and unreliable." Patricia's hands made fists at her sides. "We will design a new defensive system for Station Meridian," Alice said. "This system will incorporate Valorian technology with elements of your human construction. You will follow our specifications exactly. You will not modify the system. You will not attempt to improve it. You will simply implement it as designed. If you do this, your station will be safe." The briefing continued for another hour. The Valorians explained their vision. They showed designs that were technically beautiful and mathematically perfect. They explained how the system would work and why it was superior to anything humans could create on their own. When the briefing ended, the Valorians left the specifications in the station's computer system. The designs were complex and elegant. They were also, Matthew could see, completely inflexible. There was no room for adjustment. There was no room for human intuition. There was only the design and the requirement to follow it exactly. That evening, Matthew sat alone in his quarters and thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy run by species that were older and stronger. It meant trusting other people because you did not have the resources to be completely self-sufficient. It meant following rules designed by others because you had no choice. It meant watching your own people look small and ineffective while aliens told you how to protect them. But it also meant something else. It meant refusing to accept that other people understood your situation better than you did. It meant fighting back, even when fighting back seemed impossible. It meant trusting your own people, your own judgment, your own instincts, even when others told you that you were wrong. 3 hours after midnight, Matthew's communication officer received a distress signal from the outer colonies. The signal was urgent and clear. The Krell were coming. Matthew knew about the Krell. Every human in the military knew about the Krell. They were apex predators that had consumed entire civilizations. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They destroyed everything in their path, and they were heading towards Station Meridian. Matthew knew that he had a choice to make. He could follow the Valorian design and hope that it was good enough. Or he could trust his people and his own judgment and risk everything that Station Meridian was. He pressed the communication button and ordered an emergency meeting with his senior staff. Patricia, Derek, Lisa, and the others arrived within minutes. He told them about the signal, about the Krell, about the 48 hours they had before the enemy arrived. "We follow our own protocols," Matthew said. "We do not follow the Valorian design. Patricia, I need you to pull every defensive specification we developed during my command. Derek, I need you to prepare for a fight that no one believes we can win. Lisa, I need you to monitor everything and keep us informed." Patricia nodded slowly, understanding what Matthew was asking. He was asking them to disobey the Valorians. He was asking them to trust themselves. He was asking them to become what humans could be when they stopped accepting that others knew better. "We can do this," Patricia said. "We can make something that works." "Yes," Matthew said. "We can." The distress signal came from the colony at Outpost 7, which was located on the edge of human-controlled space. Outpost 7 had a population of 400 people. It also had no military defense and no weapon systems. It had been built as a research station, not a fortress. When Matthew heard the signal, he understood what it meant. The Krell had killed everyone at Outpost 7. They had come fast and without warning. And the colony had not even had time to evacuate. The Krell were a hive species. They did not think as individuals. They thought as one organism, thousands of them working together with perfect coordination. They were also the most efficient killing machine that anyone had ever encountered in the galaxy. Their ships could travel faster than human ships. Their weapons were more powerful. Their strategies were more perfect. But there was one thing that made the Krell different from other advanced species. They were not creative. They did not innovate. They found a strategy that worked, and they repeated it forever. They were perfect at what they did, which was destroy everything that stood in their way. Matthew called his senior staff to the command center immediately. The command center was the heart of Station Meridian. From here, all decisions were made about the defense and operation of the station. Banks of computers and screens covered every wall. Officers stood at their stations, monitoring everything from power systems to external sensors. Derek Foster, the tactical officer, was already studying the trajectory of the Krell approach. Derek was a military officer through and through. He had been born in a military family, trained in military schools, and had spent his entire adult life preparing for combat. He was 38 years old and had never lost a battle. They are moving at high speed through the outer sectors, Derek reported. The fastest estimate puts them here in 48 hours. The slowest estimate gives us 60 hours. Patricia Torres was already pulling data from the station's computer systems. She was calling up specifications for every weapon system on the station. She was cross-referencing the Valorian design with the older, human systems that she had created before the Valorians arrived. The Valorian system is elegant, Patricia said, but it is not designed for rapid Krell tactics. The Krell move faster than the Valorian weapons can track. The Krell hit harder than the Valorian shields can resist. How do you know that? Asked Captain Stephen Hayes, who was responsible for personnel and security. Because the Valorians are no longer defending anything in this sector, Patricia said. They were here. They built settlements. They established outposts. Now they are gone. The Krell drove them out. The room went quiet. No one had wanted to admit this. The Valorians had abandoned this sector because they could not defend it against the Krell. If the Valorians could not win, then humanity had no chance at all. Lisa Abbott sat at her communication station and said nothing. She was thinking. She was analyzing. She was trying to find solutions where none seemed to exist. Matthew stood at the center of the command center and felt the weight of the moment. 1,200 people depended on him. Families depended on him. Children depended on him. The planet below, with its fields and its growing settlements, depended on him. We need to contact the Valorians, said Derek. They might return to help us. They might send additional forces. The Krell destroyed the Valorian outpost at Sector 7 2 weeks ago, Patricia said. She was still pulling data. I found the report in the station archives. 30 Valorian warriors were killed. The Valorians lost more in that one battle than humans lose in entire wars. They're not coming back. Then we contact the Galactic Council, Derek said. We call for support from the other species. We request military aid. The response would take weeks, Matthew said. We have days. The reality of the situation was becoming clear to everyone in the command center. They were alone. They had no backup. They had no support coming. They had only themselves and the defenses that they could create in the time remaining. Matthew walked to where Patricia was working. She had 3 computer screens open and was moving between them rapidly. Tell me what you can do, Matthew said. Tell me the truth. Do not tell me what you wish you could do. Tell me what is actually possible. Patricia looked up from her screens. She was tired. She had been working since the distress signal arrived, and that had been 4 hours ago. Her dark eyes were focused and serious. I can modify the shield generators, Patricia said. I can rewire them to work on multiple frequencies instead of one frequency. The Valorian system uses one frequency because it is elegant. If I spread the power across multiple frequencies, it will be less efficient. But it will also be harder for the Krell to overwhelm. That sounds good, Matthew said. Continue. I can reprogram the weapon systems, Patricia continued. The Valorian system operates with perfect timing, one weapon at a time, coordinated for maximum efficiency. I can create a system where weapons fire simultaneously from different angles. It will not be as mathematically perfect, but the Krell will not be able to predict it. The Krell are perfect at responding to perfect patterns, but humans are good at creating chaos. How much time do you need? Matthew asked. All of it, Patricia said. Every hour that we have left. If you give me 48 hours, I can create something that might work. If you give me only 24 hours, then we will die. Matthew thought about this. The Krell were coming in 48 hours. Patricia needed 48 hours to create a defense system that might work. There was no time for anything else. Start now, Matthew said. I want you to take whoever you need. Take engineers. Take technicians. Take anyone who can help. I want you to work around the clock. I want you to create the best defense system that you can. Sir, Derek said, if you authorize this, we will be violating the Valorian specifications. We will be modifying their design without permission. I am aware, Matthew said. The Galactic Council could remove you from command. They could order the station seized. I am aware of that as well, Matthew said. Matthew looked at the people in his command center. He looked at their faces. He looked at their determination and their fear and their hope. We are going to make our own choice, Matthew said. We are going to trust ourselves instead of deferring to those who claim to know better. We are going to do what humans do best. We are going to survive. And we are going to do it our way. Patricia nodded and went back to her computers. She began typing commands into the system. She began calling her engineers on the communication channel. She began the process of taking apart the Valorian design and rebuilding it into something that could actually defend against the Krell in the hours that followed. Station Meridian became a place of controlled chaos. Engineers moved through the corridors, carrying equipment and supplies. Technicians worked at the shield generators, rewiring them. The weapons teams tested new firing sequences. The entire station held its breath and waited. And in the depths of space, the Krell Armada moved ever closer, unaware that the species they were hunting was getting ready to fight back. The Krell arrived exactly when Derek's calculations said they would arrive. One moment, the space around Station Meridian was empty. The next moment, it was filled with massive war vessels. There were 17 of them. Each one was larger than anything humans had built. Each one carried weapons that could destroy the station with a single volley. The Krell did not send a message. They did not offer terms of surrender. They did not ask for anything. They simply began attacking. The first volley of energy weapons came at the station like a wall of destruction. Matthew watched from the command center as the weapons approached. For a moment, he thought about the Valorian design. He thought about how that design was supposed to protect them. He thought about how elegant and perfect it had been done. Then the weapons hit the shields. The Valorian design failed within minutes. The shields flickered. The weapons overwhelmed them. Systems started burning. Alarms screamed through every corridor on the station. Shields at 60%, Derek shouted. The Valorian configuration is breaking down. We cannot maintain it against this assault. Switch to the Harrison protocols, Matthew ordered. He used the name because that was what Patricia had called the new system. It was not elegant. It was not beautiful. It was purely practical. Switching now, Patricia's voice came through the communication system. She was in the engineering section, working directly with the systems, rerouting power through the secondary matrix. 3 sectors will lose artificial gravity, but the shields should hold. The station shuddered under another bombardment. Everyone in the command center held on to something to keep from falling. Matthew felt his stomach lurch as gravity disappeared from somewhere below him. Somewhere, people were floating, experiencing weightlessness that they had not expected. But the shields held. They came back up in a new configuration. Instead of one unified shield protecting the entire station, the new system created multiple overlapping shields. They were not as efficient as the Valorian design. Efficiency was not the point. The point was survival. The Krell fired again, and this time the shields did not flicker. Matthew felt something shift inside his chest. It was not relief. He was still terrified. What he felt was worse than relief. He felt responsibility. He felt the weight of 1,200 lives depending on his choices. He felt the terrible, crushing knowledge that if he had made the wrong choice, everyone would be dead by now. This was the moment of real terror. Not the moment when weapons fired, but the moment when he realized that his decision had mattered. His trust in his people had mattered. His willingness to go against the Valorian design had mattered. "Return fire," Matthew said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "Use the defensive array that Patricia configured. Target their primary weapon emplacements." The station's weapon systems opened fire. They had been reprogrammed to fire in rapid sequences rather than in the coordinated, efficient patterns that the Valorians had designed. Instead of one perfect weapon strike, the Krell saw multiple strikes from different angles, multiple impacts, multiple explosions. The Krell war vessels were not designed to fight enemies that did not follow predictable patterns. They were designed to face enemies that operated with logical efficiency. Humans did not operate with logical efficiency. Humans operated with creativity and desperation, and the fierce desire to protect their homes. "Direct hits on 3 capital ships," Derek said, and now his voice carried something new. It carried hope. "2 of them are breaking formation. One is moving to flank us." The battle had begun in earnest. The Krell were no longer attacking passively. They were moving, shifting their strategies, adapting to the fact that their enemy was not following the expected patterns. But the human crew of Station Meridian was also adapting. Every moment that passed, Patricia's engineers discovered new ways to use the system. Every moment, Derek's weapons team found new target sequences. Every moment, the station's defenses grew stronger and more effective. The reactor temperature was climbing dangerously high. Patricia had pushed the system beyond its safe parameters to generate enough power for the shields and the weapons. The station was running on the edge of catastrophe, one moment away from complete system failure. "How long can we maintain this?" Matthew asked Derek. "Unknown," Derek said. "Patricia says the reactor can push to 90% capacity for approximately 4 minutes. After that, we will have to reduce power. Can we win this battle in 4 minutes?" Derek did not answer. He was looking at the tactical display, calculating the chances, running the numbers through his mind. Finally, he said, "No, but we can do enough damage that they might choose to retreat instead of continuing." Matthew made his decision. "Tell Patricia to push the reactor to 90%. Lisa, who had been monitoring all communications, made eye contact with Matthew. She understood what he was asking. He was asking them to risk the reactor. He was asking them to risk system failures that might kill people. He was asking them to bet everything on 4 minutes of maximum power. Pushing reactor to 90%. Patricia's voice came through the communication system. She did not question the order. She trusted Matthew, and she trusted that he knew what he was doing. The shields blazed with renewed intensity. The entire station became a fortress of brilliant blue-white light. The weapon systems fired with even greater force and frequency. The Krell war vessel screamed under the assault. One capital ship exploded. Its weapon system shut down permanently. Another vessel was crippled, its main drives offline. A third was forced to pull back and reassess. The Krell, for the first time in this engagement, began calculating the cost of continuing. They were mighty. They were powerful. But they were also efficient. If the cost of destroying this station exceeded the strategic value, they would leave. The cost of destroying this station now exceeded the strategic value. The Krell commander made the decision. The war vessels began to break formation and pull back. They did not flee. They did not retreat in panic. They simply disengaged, moving away from the station, creating distance. Station Meridian had won the battle. Matthew sat back in his command chair and felt the weight of fear drain from his body. They had survived. Against impossible odds, against creatures that were faster and stronger and more powerful. They had survived. He looked at Patricia's face on the communication display. She was exhausted. She was covered in sweat and coolant fluid. She was smiling. "We did it," Patricia said. "We actually did it." "We did," Matthew confirmed. He thought about the Valorian design, sitting in the computer system, elegant and perfect and useless. He thought about species that had been galactic powers for thousands of years. And he thought about humans who had only been in space for a little more than 100 years, fighting an enemy they were not supposed to be able to beat. "Stand down weapons," Matthew ordered. "Begin recovery protocols. And someone tell me the status of the reactor before it kills us all." Around the command center, people began to relax. The fight was over. The station had held. And Station Meridian, a small human fortress on the edge of the galaxy, had proven that humans could fight and survive against the apex predators of known space. The Krell retreated, but they did not go far. They maintained a distance of approximately 500,000 kilometers from Station Meridian. They were waiting. They were planning. They were trying to understand how the weak, primitive human species had managed to damage their war vessels. Matthew watched the sensor displays and knew what was happening. The Krell were intelligent in their own way. They learned. They adapted. Given time, they would find a weakness in the human defenses and exploit it. Station Meridian did not have time to spare. The reactor was damaged. 3 sections of the station had lost structural integrity. 2 people had been killed, and 17 others had been injured. The station could not survive another battle of that intensity, but something had changed in how the Krell approached the problem. They were no longer attacking. They were observing. Lisa Abbott sat at her communication station and monitored the Krell transmissions. Even though Lisa could not understand the Krell language, she could understand patterns. The Krell were sending signals to each other with increasing frequency. "They are analyzing," Lisa reported. "They are trying to understand why their normal attack patterns did not work. Can they figure it out?" Derek asked. "Given enough time, yes. The Krell are intelligent. They learn quickly, but they do not learn the way humans do." Matthew understood what Lisa was implying. The Krell learned through logic and pattern analysis. They had a hive mind that could process vast amounts of information simultaneously. But they did not use intuition. They did not take risks. They did not do things that seemed inefficient. "What do they expect from us?" Matthew asked. Lisa thought about this. "They expect us to defend ourselves. They expect us to place shields at the points where we are most vulnerable. They expect us to position weapons at the locations where we can most easily defend them. They expect us to respond to threats in logical, predictable ways. What if we do not?" Patricia asked. She had come to the command center to participate in the strategy discussion. Her engineers were still working on repairs, but Patricia needed to be part of the planning for what came next. "Then we create chaos," Matthew said. Derek looked at Matthew. "Sir, what are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that we stop trying to defend this station like it is a logical problem. I am suggesting that we defend it like it is a desperate situation where the normal rules do not apply." Patricia understood immediately. Her eyes lit up. "We create false targets. We move shields to unexpected locations. We make it impossible for the Krell to predict what we will do because we cannot even predict it ourselves." "Exactly," Matthew said. Over the next 2 hours, Patricia and her team created something that the Valorians would have called insane. They rewired the shield generators to move the shields from one location to another on unpredictable intervals. They created false power signatures that made it look like the station had weapon systems in places where there were no weapons. They designed targeting sequences for the weapons that varied based on random algorithms rather than predetermined patterns. None of this was efficient. None of this was elegant. None of this made logical sense, but it was designed specifically to make the Vivers Krell systems unable to track and predict human defenses. Lisa monitored the effect. As the station implemented the new systems, the Krell transmission patterns changed. They were confused. Their analysis of the human defenses no longer produced useful results. The more data they collected, the less predictable the patterns became. "It is working," Lisa said. "The Krell are becoming increasingly uncertain about how to proceed." Derek was studying the Krell formation. They were still waiting, but they were no longer moving in coordinated patterns. Individual ships were repositioning. The unified hive mind was becoming fractured. "They are having trouble adapting," Derek said. "They are treating this situation as an anomaly that they cannot process." Matthew realized something profound at that moment. The Valorians had always thought that the Krell were perfectly efficient killing machines. But the Krell were only efficient against enemies that could be analyzed and understood through logic. They were only dangerous against species that followed predictable patterns. Humans were not predictable. Humans made decisions that seemed inefficient but often worked. Humans used intuition and creativity and desperation. Humans took risks that no logical species would ever take. The Krell had evolved to be perfect at destroying things, but they had not evolved to deal with species that did not follow the rules of logical warfare. One of the Krell ships began moving toward the station. It was an aggressive action, a test of the human defenses. "All weapon systems are online," Derek said. "We can engage this target at any moment." But Matthew held back. He wanted to see what would happen. He wanted to understand the Krell better. The ship came closer. The human shields responded, but not in the way that the Krell expected. Instead of a unified shield, the shields appeared and disappeared at random intervals. The Krell sensors, trying to understand the defense pattern, found no pattern to understand. The Krell ship fired a weapon. The shield was there. The weapon was deflected. The ship tried again from a different angle. The shield had moved. The weapon was deflected again. After 7 failed attempts, the Krell ship pulled back and returned to the fleet. The hive mind was experiencing something that it had never experienced before. It was experiencing uncertainty. Lisa said, "The Krell transmission frequency is increasing. They are arguing with each other about what to do." "The hive mind is breaking down," Patricia said. She understood what was happening. The Krell were used to perfect coordination. They were used to unity of purpose. But when they encountered something that they could not understand, the unity began to fracture. "How long can we maintain this?" Derek asked. "As long as the reactor holds," Patricia said. "I can keep the system running, but I cannot promise how long that will be. Hours maybe. Days, if we are lucky." Matthew watched the Krell fleet. They were becoming more disorganized by the moment. They had come here expecting to destroy a weak human station. Instead, they had encountered something that their perfect logic could not process. "Send a message," Matthew ordered. "Simple message. Tell them that we will defend this station. Tell them that we are prepared to fight until they leave or we are destroyed." Lisa typed the message and sent it out. It was simple and clear and defiant. The Krell response was immediate. The entire fleet began moving. For a moment, Matthew thought they were preparing for another assault, but they were not. They were leaving. The Krell armada pulled back, disengaged, and began moving away from Station Meridian. They did not flee in panic, but they definitely left. The humans had won. Not through perfect logic, not through superior technology. They had won through something that the Krell could not fight. They had won through unpredictability. Matthew realized something that day that would change everything. Humans were not the weakest species in the galaxy. Humans were the most dangerous. Not because they were strongest or smartest, but because they could think in ways that perfect logic could not match. They could take risks that no logical species would consider. They could succeed against impossible odds because they refused to accept that the odds mattered. The command center erupted in cheers. People who had been scared and desperate moments before were now celebrating. They had faced the apex predators of the galaxy, and they had survived. But Matthew was already thinking about what this meant. The Valorians would hear about this. The Galactic Council would hear about this. Humans had proven something important on this day. They had proven that humanity belonged among the stars, not as students learning lessons from their superiors, but as a species that could fight and survive and win on their own terms. The aftermath of the battle was a strange time at Station Meridian. For days after the Krell left, everyone moved in a kind of daze. The reality of what had happened was slowly sinking in. They had fought the most powerful enemy that humans had ever encountered. They had won. Some people had died, but the station had survived, and the people on it had survived. The repairs took longer than anyone had expected. The reactor needed to be completely rebuilt. Sections of the station that had been damaged during the attack needed to be sealed off and repaired. Patricia and her engineering team worked constantly, sleeping in shifts, pushing forward to restore the station to functional condition. Derek compiled reports about the battle. He analyzed every weapon firing, every shield placement, every tactical decision. The report that he created showed clearly that the human strategy had worked because it was unpredictable. The Krell had been unable to adapt to an enemy that did not follow logical patterns. Lisa monitored all incoming communications, waiting to hear what the rest of the galaxy would say about the human victory. The message from the Galactic Council came 3 days after the Krell retreated. The Valorian delegation was returning to Station Meridian. Matthew received the notification and felt something shift in his stomach. He had known this was coming, but knowing it and experiencing it were two different things. The Valorians were going to want answers. They were going to want to know why Matthew had violated their specifications. They were going to want to know why he had risked the safety of the station by implementing untested defense systems. Keeper Ellis arrived with the same 5 Valorian warriors who had departed days before. They moved through the corridors of Station Meridian with their characteristic grace. Light moved through their crystalline forms in patterns that seemed to communicate emotions and thoughts. Matthew met them in the observation deck, the same place where this entire situation had begun. The planet New Haven turned below them, unchanged by the battle that had raged above it. The fields and settlements were untouched. The people were safe. Captain Harrison, Keeper Ellis said, "We have reviewed the reports of your conflict with the Krell. Your victory was unexpected." Matthew did not know how to respond to that. It was not quite congratulations, but it was not quite condemnation either. The specifications that we provided for your defensive systems were not followed, Ellis continued. The keeper's voice was the same as always, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But something in the patterns of light moving through the crystalline form suggested emotion. No, Matthew said. We did not follow your specifications. Why? Ellis asked. Matthew thought about how to answer this question. He thought about Patricia pushing the reactor beyond its safe limits. He thought about Derek analyzing attack patterns that no human should have been able to understand. He thought about Lisa monitoring communications and finding the weakness in the Krell coordination. He thought about all of the people on Station Meridian who had trusted him and who had trusted themselves, and who had decided to fight for their home instead of following orders that did not make sense. Because your design was beautiful, Matthew said, but it was not designed for us. The Krell are logical but unpredictable enemies. Your design was designed to fight logical enemies who follow predictable patterns. We needed something different. We needed something that broke the rules of logic. We needed something that only humans could create. Keeper Ellis was silent for a long moment. The patterns of light moving through the Keeper's crystalline form shifted and changed in ways that suggested deep processing of information. Your methods were inefficient. Ellis said. Yes, Matthew agreed. Your systems violated fundamental principles of elegant design. Yes, Matthew agreed again. And yet you defeated an enemy that we could not defeat. Matthew did not respond to that. Ellis seemed to understand that a response was not needed. Patricia Torres approached from the other side of the observation deck. She had come to listen to the conversation. Her engineering coveralls were stained with coolant fluid and various substances from her work repairing the station. She stood beside Matthew and did not speak, but her presence was powerful. Keeper Ellis turned toward Patricia. Engineer Torres, you modified our design without authorization. Patricia nodded. I did. You created a system that is less efficient than our original design. Yes, Patricia said. But it works for humans. It works because it does not try to force humans to think like Valorians. It lets us think like ourselves. Ellis moved closer, and for a moment, Matthew thought the Keeper was going to show anger. But when Ellis spoke, the Keeper sounded curious. Tell me how you created this system, Ellis said. Patricia began explaining her modifications. She talked about the multiple shield frequencies. She talked about the random targeting sequences. She talked about creating false power signatures and using human intuition to guide the design. She talked about everything that the Valorians would have considered wasteful and illogical. Ellis listened without interrupting. When Patricia finished, Keeper Ellis said, "This is fascinating. We have operated on the assumption that advanced civilization requires logical elegance. But your system suggests that different species may require different approaches. Your humans may have created something new, something that does not follow the patterns of advanced galactic species. We created something that lets us survive," Patricia said. "That was the only goal." "Yes," Alice said. "And you achieved it by refusing to accept our superiority, by trusting your own people instead of deferring to those who claim to know better." Matthew suddenly realized what was happening. The Valorians had always assumed that they were right. They had always assumed that their way was the best way. But Station Meridian had just proved that assumption wrong. Humans had proved that there were other ways to approach problems, other ways to defend themselves, other ways to live. "The Galactic Council will want to study your systems," Keeper Ellis said, "but not as a correction to our designs, as a new approach to defense systems that may be applicable to other species." "Then you are not removing me from command?" Matthew asked. "We are not," Ellis said. "You violated our instructions, but you did so to protect your people. And you succeeded. The Galactic Council respects results. The keeper moved toward the window. Your world is beautiful. We see why your people were willing to risk everything to defend it. Yes, Matthew said. We were. After the Valorians left, Matthew and Patricia stood alone in the observation deck. They looked down at New Haven, at the settlements that humans had built, at the future that they had fought to preserve. We changed something today, Patricia said. Not just the station. Not just the battle. We changed how the galaxy sees us. Yes, Matthew said. We did. Somewhere on the station, children were playing. Families worked together. People were working to rebuild what had been damaged and to strengthen what remained. They had survived because they had trusted themselves. They had survived because they had refused to accept that others knew better. Matthew understood now what real terror was. Real terror was the moment when you realized that everything depended on your choices. But real strength was what came after that moment. Real strength was the moment when you made those choices anyway, trusting yourself and your people, determined to survive no matter what the odds suggested. Station Meridian had survived. Humanity had survived. And in the process, they had proven something important. They had proved that humans belonged among the stars, not as followers of alien wisdom, but as equals who could think in ways that others could not understand. The future was uncertain. The Krell might return. Other enemies might come. But Station Meridian was ready. And more importantly, the rest of the galaxy now knew that humans were ready. They were not the weakest species in the galaxy. They were not the most primitive. They were something new, something different, something that could survive and win when all logical predictions said they should lose. Below, on New Haven, the sun was setting. The sky turned colors that humans had never seen before they came to this planet. And in that light, people were safe. They were home. They were alive because their captain had been willing to trust them. And because they had been willing to trust each other, that was what made humans different. That was what made them strong. That was what would keep them alive in this vast and dangerous galaxy for generations to come.